author of the book, Dare to Lead Like a Girl. The book is basically a provocation for all leaders, women as well as men, to connect to their more feminine traits like passion, emotions, relationship in the workplace, and the importance of bringing them to the workplace. And today, more than ever before. In 2014, we created Always Like a Girl campaign. Our goal with that commercial was to, reclaim the phrase like a girl to mean simply be proud to be who you are. And I believe it's time to reclaim the phrase once again, and this time in the world of leadership. There's no such thing as a masculine brain or a feminine brain, right? We all have within us both masculine traits and feminine traits. We have feminine traits, things like emotion in the workplace, things like teamwork, intuition. Those are the positive feminine traits, they call it. The positive masculine traits are things like direction and logic. The issue is that we're seeing the business world has collapsed into what they call the wounded masculine, a world where competition over collaboration, power over people versus power with people. So my book title is really a provocation to call all leaders, men and women, to tilt back that reality and dare to lead more like a girl, which means rotating between that positive masculine and positive feminine. So it's really a provocation for all of us to connect to these innate feminine traits that we all have within us. Harvard Business Review did research back in 2012 to try to understand why there's not more women in leadership roles or women not as effective as men. And in 2012, they found that women were as effective as men. And then they repeated the same research in 2019, and they found that actually women scored better than men in 17 out of 19 leadership traits. These were traits that I summarize in my book in what I call the 5P model. The first one is all around passion and purpose. We know purpose is when we align our strengths, our passion areas, and what the world needs. The second P is all around, perspective. And this is around the growth mindset. This is around stopping and asking for direction. This is around admitting mistakes, right? We know the number one driver of high performance organization is, psychological safety. And we know the number one driver of psychological safety is the leader admitting mistakes. Perspective is all about their leader's ability to, step back, look at their failures as opportunities for growth. The third P is something that I call power up or, physical wellness. We're seeing, burnout left, right, and center because we're not taking the time to put our oxygen mask on ourselves first before we can attend to others. Our last two are probably the most important. So the number 4 is actually people. And we do know that becoming a leader is very different than a manager. You're not managing the business, you're managing the people that manage the business. So people is all about how do you manage relationships? How do you get to know your employees as human beings? How do you foster these deep connections? Because the number one driver of happiness is relationship. The number one driver of happiness in the workplace is do you have a best friend at work? So people is critical. And then the last one, and the essence of it, is really positivity. Now, positivity is not about being happy all the time, but it's about giving ourselves the permission to be human. It's about basically something I call emotional bravery, which is way beyond emotional intelligence. It's allowing the emotions to come out, bringing the role of empathy. We're seeing a huge decline in empathy among, university students today versus 30 years ago, right? Because we're all behind digital screens. The role of the leader is really to elicit empathy. I personally, remember thinking politics is the worst, but, I kept on saying, I don't do politics. I'll do my work and my work will speak for itself. But I think many women kind of think, okay, politics is negative. But I want to actually help women understand that politics is just being strategic and smart about how you, go about achieving results. I remember I would walk into meetings and create this beautiful cell, not understanding the decision has been made on the golf course or, way before because, the alliances and discussion, and especially when I was a C-suite, the only woman in a group of men, it's something that I had to pick up on and I had to really become, more politically savvy, which basically means understanding the room and dynamics, it doesn't mean, losing your integrity. It's just being smart about things. It's creating alliances. So there's a great model of kind of, where how different animals can be both reading the room, but keeping our integrity. So they talk about the owl being how high in, understanding the room, but also high in integrity. How can we be owls versus, the sheep, for example, that doesn't understand the room and may have high integrity. The fox has high understanding of the room, but low integrity, and the donkey has a low on both of them. So really, this model kind of helped me understand, how we can reframe politically savvy in just being strategic and smart about how we achieve results. And we see that women score lower on because they're just kind of think that it's something they don't want to engage in. Well, this is a reality when you get to, senior roles. So you better learn how to do it smartly. The reason I was driven to write the book is I felt on my own kind of experience, 17 years, I was in a state of flow, and I felt what it feels like to work with a company that really appreciates you as a human being, and then working with a boss that was actually extremely, controlling and denigrating. And I saw how my performance kind of shrunk because I was so busy defending myself. So we see, sadly, that what happened to me is way too prevalent in the work today. I mean, Gallup shows 85% of employees are unhappy in the workplace. 20% of employees are so unhappy, they're making other people unhappy, right? These are the toxic employees. 1 in 4 employees experience acute anxiety. Now, this was before COVID. We're seeing COVID accelerate all of this significantly. I mean, people had the time to reflect on where they are and what's important for them in life. And the outcome is the Great Resignation. The number one driver of Great Resignation is toxic environments. And so we're seeing, our previous models are not working for us in the midst of this crisis. It's actually those more feminine traits. Think that like intuitions, like empathy. How can you manage a remote team if you don't have empathy? It's becoming ever more complicated. So in the midst of this crisis, we're seeing these traits becoming, critical. I'm an optimist, and we do see that we can turn this around. I mean, when I talk about happiness in the workplace, I have CEOs tell me, oh, Dalia, it's fluffy. And I show them the data. It's costing us $7 trillion in stress-related disease, absenteeism, etc. However, we can turn it around. We have learned that we can teach ourselves to become more resilient, to become more empathetic. And, we always say crisis is a great opportunity for growth. Post-traumatic growth is different from resilience. Resilience is when you're able to bounce back. Post-traumatic growth is when you're able to actually grow from your traumas. And I think, the pandemic was a great opportunity. In Chinese, the word crisis meaning danger, but also, opportunity. Same in Hebrew, the word, crisis, mashber, is actually the last stage before birth. So I think we're in an important inflection point. And the question is, what do we want to do about that? How focused are we on the strength? Are leaders able to identify their team strengths and to bring their strengths to work? We still know that only 30% of employees know their strengths and only 17% bring them to work every day. And yet employees that are focused on strengths are 2 times more likely to succeed. So how are we making sure as leaders we're putting the right people in the right seats on the bus? This is all about strengths, about seeing new opportunities. This is all the perspective, the growth mindset. We all had a lesson in resilience. We all saw that it's okay not to be okay, and that we can kind of see hope, be grateful, focus on what we have versus what we don't have, what we can control versus what we can't control. It's such a critical inflection point that if we all take the time and make sure we don't go back into the grind, but take all these learnings, reflect on them, we actually have a beautiful inflection point. Courage is probably the most misunderstood word. People perceive it to mean making decisions that others didn't make. But courage actually comes from the French word cœur, which means heart. Because courageous leaders lead from the heart. So that's kind of the premise of the book. Dare to lead like a girl.